Ready? Play.
So we've got the Madrid semifinal set between Casper Ruud and Francisco Cerundolo. As you can see on the screen, it is a 5-3 head-to-head. And Nick, I think we're in for a highly contested battle here. You got Cerundolo. This is his second appearance in a Masters 1000 semifinal. And you got Casper Ruud, who, is looking for a result after dropping a bunch of points as he was a finalist in Monte Carlo in 2024 and won in Barcelona in 2024. I think he lost 950 points in those past 2 weeks. So, a huge run here in Madrid is helpful. And if he does win the title, it would bring him back into the top 10. But all things aside, we're looking at, two informed players. Talk about Cerundolo having, the best season of his life so far, up to 24 wins so far this season, getting to the quarterfinals in 7 of his last 8 events. And now this is his 16th win on the surface, clay that is. And today he was doing more of the same against Jakob Mensik, came through in 3. It wasn't an easy match. He had to battle it out because Mensik, so serve dominated in the altitude. The conditions are great for him, but he really showed his resilience to come back and fight hard, win that tiebreak, and then took that momentum with him into the third set. On top of that, coming through Zverev, who he actually beat in Madrid last year, so he did that again. But overall, you're looking at a player who's super, super comfortable on the surface, loves these conditions, and is truly thriving. For Casper Ruud, obviously, a tough 2 weeks beforehand, but he's made his way here without dropping a set. It came through Rinderknecht, Korda, Fritzy, which was a little bit more of a battle, and then today he beat Medvedev in straights. Fairly straightforward, but just doing such a great job on return and making it so difficult, to play him with how much depth and spin he uses on the surface. So, like I said, it's going to be a tight one. It's going to be a battle. Both players really, searching for a huge result here. What do you make of this matchup, Nick?
I mean, it's pretty even, right? It's the battle of the big forehands on clay. Maybe Ruud is the ultimate stereotype of this because Cerundolo's more of an all-rounder than he is, but no doubt that Cerundolo is probably most comfortable on a clay court. Decent on hard, but and that goes to show from the head-to-head because it's 2-all on clay overall. So it's very difficult to call. Cerundolo's having a very good season. Ruud, we know, is the ultimate clay merchant on the men's tour, if you want to call it that. But what's interesting is that they're both under pressure in some ways. Like Cerundolo this is the second time in his career he's been this far. He's never been further than this in a Masters 1000 or any big event, sort of above a 250. And then you get to, or even a 500, and then you get to Ruud, and arguably he's never going to have a better opportunity of winning a 1000 in his career. Like, unless things really fall apart in Rome next week, and then he's on pole position there, then I could see that potentially happening for him. If, say, Sinner's a bit rusty when he comes back, or Alcaraz doesn't play, Djokovic isn't playing. That's the future, though. With this matchup, I think it's going to be interesting to see who's the most nervous about the bigger picture. And I think that might play into the results, because if they go toe-to-toe and it's even Stevens, we are going to be in for a clay court classic.
No, you're spot on. And, it's important to mention only one of their 8 battles have gone 3 sets. So, you think about how important is that first set, and you think about the mental, as you mentioned, how much pressure is on both these players, and Ruud trying to live up to that status and cement himself back in the top 10. Obviously, 2 super important events coming up for him, but as you mentioned, you're looking at such an open opportunity, for both players in terms of the way this draw has kind of panned out with top players. We're losing them left and right so far. So let's get back to, kind of the recency in terms of form in their last matchup coming in Miami. I feel like it's a little bit of an outlier in terms of you think about Cerundolo being a little bit more of an all quarter and really just thriving in 2025, no matter where he is in the world and what surface it is. I think those conditions and with Clay on the horizon after Miami, Casper might be thinking a little bit in the future at that point in time. But, I was at that match and, Cerundolo was just so solid as he was that week in Miami. So, I don't make too much of that matchup. I think what's important is kind of the ability to handle the spin and depth that Ruud plays with and attacking that, first serve, even the second serve. He's very aggressive on that return. And Franny is just quite comfortable at the baseline. So I think he's going to be able to kind of weather that storm, weather that spin a little bit better than some of the previous opponents have. And I think that gives him, more of a shot in the neutral ball rallies. I think he's more of a powerful player, even off both wings. You talk about the forehand, it's a lot flatter from Cerundolo. I think it's definitely bigger than Ruud's. Ruud is a little bit more angle-based, spin-based, which, as I mentioned, does frustrate a lot of players. But I think Franny's, comfort on the surface is going to be important here. His movement is spot on. He really understands like court dynamics, metrics in that sense, and shouldn't put himself in too many positions to get hurt. But I mean, I think this is another mental battle as well. And Franny showed that he can come through those today. That was a super impressive win. It was very serve dominated, so he wasn't getting many looks. But when he did get a chance to go and attack that Mensik second serve, he did a great job of it. Hit it with a lot of depth, a lot of aggression, and got himself into points. So I think just at times, Franny can be a little bit more clinical. But, in terms of years past, like Franny's head hasn't been all there, either across a match, across a set. So I think that's important for him to stay focused and engaged. And on the other hand, Casper Ruud is, I'd say he's very, mentally sound. He's very present in the moment. But there have been some slip ups, whether it's serving for a set or taking break points. There have been some slip ups this week, despite it looking super straightforward. He was up a break against Korda, threatening a double break at, 3-love. I think he had 30-40, didn't get it. It was back to 3-all in the first set. I think failed to serve out the set against Fritz. So, there have been some blips and moments. And you just kind of look at how compact Cerundolo has been. It's been impressive. So for me, it's a slight edge to Cerundolo, but I mean, we're just looking at such a tight battle here. What are you thinking here, Nick?
Oh, I'm going the opposite. I'm going Ruud. For much the same reasons. And I think the mental fragility thing is what's going to play a part in this. And historically, watching Cerundolo, in some moments, I think, he could be more clinical. Whereas, you're right about Ruud. Sometimes things, he might not be as complete in some moments, like he could win matches by bigger margins. I would say that about most players. I think that's why Ruud is probably where he is and why he's regarded the way where he is as a player at the moment. But for me, noticeably, when it gets to kind of the latter parts of tournaments, quite often that's when he locks in the most. He's more vulnerable earlier on. If I think about sort of his previous runs at big events, he tussled with Carlos Alcaraz in the US Open final. He finally took out Novak Djokovic at Monte Carlo last year in the semis, and then went toe-to-toe with Tsitsipas in the final. I think the only times where he's not really stepped up is when he's been blown off the court by a much better player, or he was playing Nadal, who he had way too much respect for. So I think, not that you shouldn't respect Rafael Nadal, but you know what I mean. I think Cerundolo is not in that kind of category. I think Ruud knows he's in for a fight. I trust him to lock in more in the big moments. And if it's as tight as we think it is, that's why I'm going to go for Casper Ruud to make the Madrid final.
No, I love that. And I think you're, correct. And I actually point more to like tactics and game plan. I feel like Casper Ruud has such a good grip on his game and understanding the surface. And even when times are maybe a little bit tougher, he knows where to go. He backs himself and he trusts his instincts. And I think you're right that could be become a huge factor in such a tight battle. But overall, looking forward to it, and it should be a highly contested battle. So
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.